Good evening, Grumpy Nation. Here we are again. I hope everyone's feeling well, apart from Vaughn, who's obviously sick. I'd like him to feel well, but he won't be, will he? So, yeah, you know what I mean. So, get well soon, Vaughn. Right, we're going to tuck into the corporate sector again tonight. Give them a bit of a seeing too. Who we got tonight? It's quieter tonight, isn't it? Espresso Mechanic and Cellini. Good to see you guys. Let's shall we just get ready to crack on? I think you know the score. If you like it, like it. If you don't, why are you here? If you've good evening, Dreadeye. If you want to drop me a donation, then feel free to do so. Many people do. Well, not many people, but people do, and I really appreciate them. You'll get a shout out for it, and you'll get the dreaded siren if you do it on the screen, or if you do it live. Hi Vaughn, good to see you. Good to see that you've crawled out of your pit to see us, even though you're desperately ill, or you're lying on the couch with your lemsip. Anyways, regardless of that, and then that's about it. We'll go through this, and any questions, feel free to fire in. I'm always available or accommodating to a degree. If you're on the vertical stream, all you need to do to make a comment is subscribe. You don't need to wait. There's no waiting period. Everyone just gets to talk as soon as you're a subscriber. That's the only stipulation. Doesn't cost you anything. And you can even unsubscribe later if you want. I don't care. I've given up caring. Oh, she's going to make banana bread tomorrow. Excellent. There. So he's not off his food then, is he? What is it? Feed a cold, starve a fever. So I'm assuming it's a cold he's got. I've been fasting for 2 days now, so this is day 2 of the fast. I've lost 3 pounds at weigh-in this morning. And we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna keep going, but I'll get you posted. Right. I'm just checking the vertical stream is running. Yes, it appears to be. It's live. Excellent. Right. Here we go, people. Let's get into it. As they say. Turn the lower third off. You know who I am. She can't bake. I bet you could if you put your hand to it. Did you not work for a bakery? Did you not pick anything up, Cellini? Come on. Right, anyway, here we go. Let's start with a disclaimer, because, as always, this is a fact-based channel dealing with court records, internal corporate documents, congressional testimony, and documented evidence. We're not peddling conspiracy theories. Everything I'm about to show you tonight is sourced from legal proceedings, government investigations, and companies' own internal documents. This is not speculation. This is documented corporate behaviour that has killed people for profit. Right, now that's out of the way. Tonight we're talking about when corporations kill. And I mean that literally. We're going to examine cases where major corporations knew their products were deadly, calculated that it was cheaper to pay compensation than to fix the problems, and made the conscious decision to let people die for the mighty dollar, all for profit. So if you're in the chat, let me know where you're watching from tonight. Feel free to jump in at any point. If you've got any experience with corporate negligence, whether personal or professional, drop it in the chat. We'll get to it later. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Sarge, surely companies wouldn't actually calculate human life in spreadsheets. Oh, you sweet deluded children. Not only do they calculate it, they've got entire departments dedicated to it. I'm going to see exactly how they do it. So let's start with the corporation kills big one, which was the granddaddy of it all, ground zero, the Ford Pinto. So, the Ford Pinto from 1973. The memo was released. This is the Rosetta Stone of corporate callousness. Ford's own engineers calculated that fixing the fuel tank problem would cost $137 million. So the car had a problem. If you rear-ended it, it tended to burst into flames. And that worked out $11 per car across 11 million vehicles. Simple fix, right? But Ford also calculated that paying compensation for deaths and injuries would only cost $49.5 million. So what did they do? They quite simply chose to let people burn because it saved them $87.5 million. They literally put a price tag on human life. They reckoned about $200,000 per death, $67,000 per serious injury, and $700 per burned car. These weren't abstract numbers. They were real people, real families, real children who burned to death because Ford couldn't be bothered spending $11 per car. And it's worse than that. It's actually worse. I can see that you are astounded, Shalini, and you should be. Here's the really sick part. Ford's calculations were deliberately dishonest. They claimed burn injuries would equal burn deaths when experts knew the ratio was 10-1. They used artificially low values for human life when federal agencies recommended much higher figures, and they inflated repair costs when third-party companies offered fixes for under $5. Between 1970 and 1978, an estimated 500 to 900 people died in Pinto fires that could have been prevented. That's not my number. That's from court testimony and congressional investigations. Ford knew these cars were death traps and fire traps. And these are direct quotes from internal Ford documents. You think any Ford executives went to prison for this? Take a guess. We'll come back to it near the end. The Pinto case established a template that corporations still use today. Step 1, identify a deadly flaw. Step 2, calculate cost of fixing versus cost of compensation. Step 3, if compensation is cheaper, let people die. It's quite straightforward. Good business, yeah. Step 4, deny everything until the evidence becomes overwhelming. So what do you think happened to the Ford executives? Do you think they got prison, fines, promotions? Let me see your guesses. Yeah, they are evil. They're definitely evil. Right. And not to be outdone, General Motors didn't make it any different because the next one isn't a small car with a rear end problem. It's a full-size pickup truck with side impact problem, and the scale of death is even worse. For 2 decades, from the early 70s into the late 80s, General Motors sold millions of Chevrolet and GMC pickups with fuel tanks mounted outside the protective frame of the chassis rails. A design nicknamed side saddle. In plain English, that means a petrol tank sat on the sides of the truck, hanging like saddlebags, right where a side impact would crush it. You don't need to be a crash engineer to see the problem there. So what happened in the real world? Side hits that should have been survivable turned into instant infernos. Safety analysts and public databases corroborate that hundreds, and by some estimates over 1,000 people burned to death in crashes involving these side saddle trucks. Various tallies over the years placed the toll anywhere from the high hundreds to over 2,000 fatalities as the trucks aged on the roads. Different methodologies count differently. Some code deaths to impact force, some to fire. But the pattern is consistent. These trucks were vastly more likely to erupt in fatal fires and side impact crashes than their competitors. Here's the detail. General Motors engineers knew very early on in the design that outside the frame tanks were vulnerable to side impacts. Internal discussions over the years considered moving the tanks inboard or shielding them, and outside engineers warned the design would inevitably be intruded upon in standard side crashes. Small shields were tried. The fundamental hazard remained. By the late 1980s, GM finally moved the tanks inboard on new designs, but millions of older trucks stayed on the roads for years. There's probably some still out there. And when regulators finally moved towards declaring a safety defect and a recall, a political deal was struck instead of a recall. Money for safety programs, but no mass fix for the millions of trucks that were still on the road. People kept dying in post-crash fires year after year because it was cheaper to negotiate than to retrofit. Sound familiar? Now, some will bring up the famous NBC Dateline scandal where producers staged a demonstration with pyrotechnics. Yeah, and that did happen. They set one on fire using mini bombs. And NBC apologised. Don't let a television stunt distract you from the documented risk that was signalled across crash data. Lawsuits, autopsy reviews, and engineering memos, independent analysis still showed a dramatically higher risk of fatal fire and side impacts from these trucks comparable to Ford and Dodge models of the era. So let's connect this back to the Pinto. Different crash vector. Pinto was rear, GM pickups were side, different platforms, compact car versus full-size truck, same lethal calculus. It's cheaper to deny and delay than to fix the fleet. Same outcome, families lose loved ones to fires that never had to happen. If the auto industry could normalise murder math and mental and gasoline, just wait till you see what happens when the product is a pill. Because the numbers get bigger, the denials get slicker, and the victims get blamed. So, moving from burning cars to poisoned pills, the pharmaceutical industry has perfected the art of killing for profit. And remember, YouTube, this is not opinion. This is documented fact. Yeah, imagine if a Pinto reversed into the side of a Chevrolet. That's a cracker one. That would indeed be spectacular, would it not? Oh, well, we can't quite see that. Let's move it up. Let's move that up so people can see it. There. Well done, Vaughn. Yeah, no, that was a good one. Good one, mate. I like that. He's still sharp. His brain's still ticking over, even though he's ill. Right. So, and in this case, in some of the cases, these pharmaceutical companies got government immunity to protect them while they did it. And you know what I'm talking about. So, first up, OxyContin and the opioid crisis. Now, pay attention to this timeline because it's absolutely damning. In 1995, the Federal Drugs Administration approved OxyContin based on limited data. Purdue Pharma was allowed to claim it was believed to reduce abuse potential. Note the language. Here's where it gets criminal. Purdue trained their sales reps to tell doctors that OxyContin had less than 1% addiction risk. 1%. This is an opioid. They based this lie on a 5-sentence letter about hospital patients, a study completely irrelevant to chronic pain treatment. The letter's author later said he was horrified at how Purdue misused his work. Anyone know anyone that's been affected by the opioid crisis? No need for details, just a show would be interesting. I mean, I remember, I think I was addicted to Cocodamol at one point. I took it for pain and I ended up taking it regularly, and I thought, why am I still taking these? Because I don't really feel pain, and I didn't feel anything from taking opioids, and when I went to come off it, it was horrendous. I just stopped in 2 weeks of like restless legs and couldn't sit still, fidgeting, always looking for something to do. It was weird, really weird. But I just powered through and don't take it anymore. I think I'm quite good at that kind of thing. I don't tend, once I've decided that's it, that's it. So, internal Purdue documents, and these are court exhibits now, not conspiracy theories, show executives knew OxyContin was highly addictive from day one. 5 months after approval, they were getting reports of people crushing and injecting the pills. They discovered 68% of the drug could be extracted from crushed tablets. Did they warn doctors? Did they change their marketing? Did they? Hell. Espresso mechanic. His auntie was addicted to codeine when she was young and it almost destroyed her kidneys, yeah. And when I was in Hong Kong, I used to get headaches occasionally and the doctor would prescribe codeine. Not paracetamol and not aspirin, because you can't give kids under 14 aspirin. So you would get codeine from the doctor. Navy surgeon as well. So they continued claiming it was abuse resistant while sales exploded from 44 million to nearly 3 billion. And get this, addiction rates in chronic pain patients range from 12 to 45%, not the less than 1% they claimed. The human cost? Over 400,000 Americans dead since 1999. 400,000. That's more than all American combat deaths in World War II. And it started with Purdue's calculated lie about addiction risk. Purdue eventually pleaded guilty and paid $634 million in fines. Sounds like a lot. But remember, they were doing $3 billion a year at the end. So they made that much profit in about 4 months of OxyContin sales. So, still profitable business. What do you think happened to the Purdue executives who created this crisis? Prison sentences? Massive personal fines? Do you think they walked away rich? Tell me what you think. So it gets worse. Let's get worse. Let's talk about Vioxx. Merck's arthritis drug was known to cause heart attacks and strokes from 2000. But they hid this information while aggressively marketing to millions. And America, this is the one thing that I cannot believe you still allow to happen. You allow drug companies to market directly to the public. I think there's only 2 countries in the world allow this. One of them is the USA, and I think the other, bizarrely enough, is New Zealand. I may be wrong on that, but it's something like that. But definitely the US. So they hid the information that caused heart attacks and strokes, marketed it to millions, and internal documents show that Merck dismissed cardiologist warnings and even requested that safety information be kept from the public. The result? Between 88,000 and 140,000 Americans suffered heart attacks due to Vioxx. 30 to 40% of those were fatal. That's up to 56,000 dead from one drug that Merck knew was dangerous. Merck eventually settled for $4.85 billion and paid another $950 million in criminal penalties. But here's the obscene part. They pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor. That's an offence, not a crime. You get harsher sentences for stealing. So what's worse, selling a product you know will kill people or covering up the evidence while people die? And remember YouTube, this is all fact, all based on court and congressional testimony. So, Shirley has recently developed a gummy bear addiction. Oh, has she now? Well, there you go. Where are we next? Right. So if you thought pharmaceutical companies were bad, wait, wait, it gets worse. What about corporations that deliberately poison children? And I mean deliberately poison them while calculating the costs. 2007, the year of the great Chinese toy recall. Mattel, that huge toy company, the world's largest toy maker, recalled nearly 20 million toys due to lead paint. Lead paint in 2007. We've known about lead since the Romans went nuts. And lead paint on children's toys. Lead that causes permanent brain damage in developing minds. So, adults can tolerate a certain degree of it, but children can't because it will stunt their growth. So Mattel had worked with some Chinese suppliers for 15 years. 15 years, and they praised these suppliers' exemplary product safety systems, while these same suppliers were painting their toys with lead. The recall included Dora the Explorer, Sesame Street, and Thomas the Tank Engine toys. Characters that kids trust, made by companies that parents trust, contaminated with brain-damaging poison. One Chinese factory alone produced 83 different types of toys painted with lead pigment. And here's the truly sickening part. When asked about consumer trust, a Mattel executive could only mumble, well, clearly we've let the consumer down. Let them down? You poisoned their children. And you think it gets better? Let's talk about Johnson & Johnson and their decades-long asbestos cover-up. So, dating back to 1969, we have court documents that show Johnson & Johnson knew their baby powder contained asbestos, a deadly carcinogen. Let's turn the ticker off. In baby powder, applied to the most intimate areas of women and children. Internal memos specifically mentioned trace amounts of asbestos in talc samples. Did they warn customers? No. Did they reformulate? No. Kept selling it for decades while just denying any danger. Scientists have since linked talc use to ovarian cancer and mesothelioma. Thousands of women developed deadly cancers after decades of using products they thought were safe. St. Louis jury awarded $4.78 billion to 22 women who developed ovarian cancer, one of the largest product liability verdicts in history. We've all used baby powder at some point, haven't we? Yeah. Johnson & Johnson has faced over 60,000 lawsuits and spent more than $6 billion trying to settle claims. We get this. They've even tried to wiggle out of it. They tried to use bankruptcy laws to avoid liability. They spun off a subsidiary, had it declare bankruptcy, and then tried to cap their liability through the bankruptcy proceedings. And you got to give America credit here. Their federal judges have rejected this scheme 3 times. They're just not wearing it. But Johnson & Johnson keeps trying. Corporate 3-card Monte with cancer victims' lives and compensations as the stakes. What do you think the punishment should be for people that knowingly sell cancer-causing chemicals? Babies. Can't countenance it, can you? You just can't. Oh God, here we go. I used to go to my auntie's, in the old days. Well, when I was growing up, nobody went abroad. You went to your auntie's for 2 weeks in the summer holidays. And my auntie stayed in Dundonald, not the one in Ireland, the one in Ayrshire. So we'd be sent up there for a couple of weeks, and right beside the village of Dundonald is a Monsanto plant, huge Monsanto plant. It's gone now. Now it's now a care home for the elderly, but it was a Monsanto plant. But let's talk about Monsanto and Roundup and the cancer cover up that's still ongoing. So Bayer, I think they're German, aren't they? They bought Monsanto in 2018 for 63 billion and inherited hundreds of thousands of lawsuits claiming that Roundup causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Internal Monsanto documents revealed in court show a company that spent decades manipulating science and attacking researchers who questioned glycophosphate safety. And we touched on that yesterday, didn't we? Because yesterday we were talking about how science has been corrupted by the corporations. So in 2015, the World Health Organization declared glycophosphate probably carcinogenic to humans. Monsanto's response wasn't to investigate safety concerns or to look at their processes. It was to launch aggressive campaigns discrediting the World Health Organization and funding studies designed to show safety. Now, the World Health Organization has its faults, but I think we can all agree that Monsanto is an inherently evil corporation. So, court documents revealed Monsanto's practice of ghostwriting scientific papers that appeared to be independent research, but were actually just made up company propaganda. They secretly funded the American Council on Science and Health and other front groups that attacked scientists studying glycophosphate. So juries have consistently found Monsanto liable. A Georgia man recently won $2.1 billion after claiming Roundup caused his cancer. The company faces over 60,000 active lawsuits despite spending more than $10 billion on settlements. Here's a modern twist. Bayer is now seeking state laws and Supreme Court intervention to block future cancer lawsuits. They are arguing that federal pesticide regulations should preempt state court claims. Translation: they want government protection from accountability. And this brings us right up to date, doesn't it? To the newest evolution in corporate immunity. So, we're going to talk about the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine here. And we're just going to put it bluntly in fact. And we're not talking about anti-vax conspiracies. This isn't about vaccine efficacy, whether it works or not, whether you should or shouldn't get vaccinated. I'm not interested in that. This is purely about the corporate immunity and the government indemnification schemes. So AstraZeneca was granted blanket legal immunity for COVID vaccine injuries. Blanket. Complete immunity. They cannot be sued no matter what happens. In February 2024, they admitted in court that their vaccine can, in very rare cases admittedly, cause PTS, which is blood clots. And here's the timeline. First, they got complete immunity. Then they made billions in profits and got damehoods, some of them. And when you see that woman being applauded at the tennis, who looks deeply uncomfortable, she's not shy. She knows. She knew what they were doing. And I'm pretty sure she knew that she was partly responsible. That is supposition on my part, but anyone can see that she knew. So they made billions in profits, but only after securing total legal protection did they admit that their vaccine could, in rare circumstances, kill people. Now, regardless of your vaccine stance, this should terrify you. The precedent here is that corporations can get government immunity, make massive profits, admit to dangers after they're legally protected, and not lose money or have to compensate the victims. This is abhorrent. No sane, civilized person would agree to this, surely. But they did. Families of those injured or killed can't sue the manufacturer. They have to rely on government compensation schemes that usually offer inadequate payments. UK scheme offers 120,000 maximum, unchanged since 2010 and woefully inadequate for a lifetime disability or death. This is the newest evolution of corporate immunity, socialising the risks while privatising the profits. It's a great business to be in. So, why didn't they go to prison? It's £1 million question, isn't it? Corporate executives who knowingly kill people face civil penalties, not criminal charges. When was the last time you heard of a CEO doing hard time for murder? What's Espresso saying? Anyone anywhere on the planet had got? I believe some people have had compensation, Shalini. A lot of people have been turned down. Also illustrates that they know what they are peddling isn't safe, and if they know it, they wouldn't seek immunity if they believed it was safe. Well, yeah. And, one could turn around and say, well, the pharmaceutical companies are put between a rock and a hard place. And bear with me, because everybody's clamoring out for a vaccine to stop the pandemic. And never before had a vaccine ever been brought to market in less than 7 years. Because you can't do long-term testing in 7 months. You just can't do it. So, is that a valid argument to put something out that you actually know, and you've admitted in court that you knew could cause issues in some people? I think not. I mean, remember, the vaccine that caused narcolepsy, was that a flu jab, was recalled immediately after just 16 people were affected and the whole vaccine was pulled. 16 people. How many people have been a victim of the AstraZeneca? I don't even think it's bad or evil, people. Espresso Mechanic, I think it's just down to money. And as far as corporations go, it is purely down to money. Watch Robocop. Watch Rollerball. It's purely money. It's just a money thing. That's all it is. Right. Why does this keep happening? And what would real reform look like? So the system fails because it's designed to fail. When civil penalties are less than profits, corporations will choose murder. It's good business sense. Good business sense. When regulators are captured by industry, they protect corporations instead of people. When executives face no personal consequences, they have no incentive to change. There are 3 pillars of corporate impunity. Inadequate penalties. Merck paid $4.85 billion for Vioxx, but made far more selling the drug. Johnson & Johnson spent $6 billion on talc litigation. I mean, how many times can you say that? Talcum powder litigation. But generated decades. And when we say decades, we mean 50 years of profits. These aren't punishments, they're just licensing fees for the occasional murder. Second pillar, delayed justice. Legal proceedings take decades while companies continue profiting. And usually the people that are at the crux of these cases sometimes die before there's any resolution. The Pinto memo was written in 1973, but Ford didn't recall it until 1978. Johnson & Johnson's been fighting talc cases since the 90s. Justice delayed is literally justice denied when people die waiting. Regulatory capture. The Federal Drug Administration depends on industry funding. The watchdog is dependent on industry funding. EPA officials move between government and industry jobs. It's a revolving door. When the regulators serve corporate interests, they actively shield companies from accountability. Well, espresso mechanic, I mean, that's a given, isn't it, mate? I mean, I think any pharma company CEO would say that. And also they would say a customer cured is a customer lost, wouldn't they? Corporate executives who knowingly sell. And right, so let's think about real reform and what we could do. Criminal accountability. Corporate executives who knowingly sell deadly products should face criminal charges. In fact, that charge should be murder because it's premeditated, isn't it? When Ford calculated that 180 deaths were cheaper than an $11 fix, that's premeditated murder. And the motive is profit. What about a corporate death penalty? Companies that repeatedly kill customers could lose their right to exist. Dissolve the company. Transfer the assets to victim compensation schemes and eliminate any ongoing harm. Don't let anyone else make that product. Why should we have any regard for them when they have no regard for us? End regulatory capture. No more industry funding of regulators. No more revolving door between government and industry. Independent oversight of regulatory decisions. That needs to be the case regardless of the industry. And we've got conflicts of interest across the world, where we have our regulators and watchdogs funded by the very institutions that they're supposed to be checking up on. And we should have victim-centered justice. Immunity schemes should not exist for corporations. Damage caps shouldn't be there. Victim compensation funds should be financed by the industry, not the taxpayers, not the government. What do you think's more important? Criminal accountability, ending corporate immunity, or regulatory independence? But now we don't have a lot of people in tonight, but it's just one of these things. Don't know why these things happen. Last night we were pretty busy. So the Ford Pinto memo from 1973 could have been written yesterday. The same cold calculations, the same disregard for human life, the same corporate immunity from justice. What makes this especially infuriating is that these aren't accidents. They're deliberate business decisions made by executives who knew people would die. The documents are there in black and white. Human life reduced to actuarial tables and cost benefit analysis. When it's cheaper to let people die than fix dangerous products, corporations will choose death every single time because it doesn't make sense not to. The victims of Ford Pinto's OxyContin addiction, Vioxx heart attacks, lead painted toys, asbestos contaminated talcum powder, Roundup cancer, and vaccine injuries all deserved better than they got. But more importantly, future victims deserve protection from corporations that view human life as just another line item in their profit calculations. So, yeah, I think the mega corporation should be broken up, Espresso. You're right. Far too much money as well, far too much power. Yeah. Corporatism has always been a problem, and we have been warned about it by Hollywood when they were actually doing their job, like Rollerball and Demolition Man. Corporatism's just a real big problem. And, capitalism's fine, but capitalism still needs to be tempered. As I said last week, I think there's a line between going too far left or right. I think you need to be in the middle because there's good in both sides. You just need to bring that out and bring it together. So there we go. That's it's been a shorter one tonight, but been less people in the chat. But the people that have been in the chat have been very helpful. Thank you. It's been a heavier topic. It's not so much fun. Maybe we'll get something funnier tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. But as they say, it's always been great for you.